it was just addressing it.
Okay, I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen for Monday, March 25th to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. It's time for public comment, and I know we have Monica McNally here to give us a public service announcement. Good evening, Monica. And Frank Kemp, thank you for joining.
Hi, everyone. As Jamie said, I'm Monica McNally. I'm chairman of the Public Works Committee for the RTM. As you probably remember, the Board of Selectmen moved the discussion and possible creation of an ordinance to the RTM. The RTM moved it to the Public Works as a primary committee, and the Town Government Structure and Administration and Public Health and Safety as secondary committees. Altogether, that's 40 people from the RTM's 99 members that are working on this. We had our first meeting with the BYO group back in December, or I'm sorry, in November, after elections. No, I'm sorry, actually it was in December. They presented to all three committees. Since then, we have been soliciting town opinion, both business and individuals. We have done this in many different ways. We had a public hearing on February 6th. We had approximately 110, 120 people somewhere in there attend. We had 30 speakers. We had 25 people that spoke in favor of the ordinance, 4 people that spoke, I would put it as not in favor of the ordinance, and 1 person, I don't know how else to say it, was ambivalent. At that time, we also encouraged people to write letters to the RTM. We received 65 letters. Let's see, 43 individuals were for the ordinance, 7 were against, 5 businesses were for, 1 was against, 4 groups were for, 1 was against. And we had 5 letters that I would put in the concern for local business category. And after that, we went out and we visited local businesses, 13 in all. Jamie and I visited 7 together one day. We had what I would call in-depth interviews with the businesses to see, well, A, how they felt about the ordinance, but B, also to kind of educate them on the different aspects of the ordinance, because it's a little bit more involved / complicated than just banning plastic bags. We've reached out to town committees and commissions for input. We have been in the paper at least 12 times. We have had, including one letter by the editor on February 21st. We've had several meetings. We are having a public hearing on Wednesday at 8 o'clock here in the town hall. And our goal, the reason I'm telling you all this is because our goal has been to create an ordinance that will be supported both by individuals and businesses in the community. Something that we want everybody to try to get behind. And we've tried to be as flexible as possible while being true to the spirit of the ordinance. The goal of the ordinance is to encourage people to bring their own plastic bags and to end the use of single-use plastic bags, those little flimsy bags that I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. As far as timing goes, we will be either on the Rules Committee for the RTM to have the RTM vote on this for either a vote on April 22nd or on June 10th. We're having so to get on the RTM agenda, we need to be on the rules for Monday, and it's a little tight because of the public hearing that we're having. So the ordinance you have in front of you, you have a summary of important provisions, and then you have the actual draft of the proposed ordinance. Again, the goal of the ordinance is to reduce paper bag waste. You can see that. Just to go briefly over these points here. As always, a customer can bring in any type of bag they want into any store with them at any time between now and eternity. The proposed ordinance would affect consumers and business establishments in the following manner. What I did is I kind of broke it out by date. So if you are a store that's over 10,000 square feet, you will have between now and January 1st to use up your current supply of bags, plastic bags, paper bags, your logo bags, anything like that. After that, you will be required to offer a customer that comes into your store either a recycled paper bag that's made with 40% post-consumer material, or a reusable bag, including reusable bags that are made out of plastic, which has to be a minimum of 12 mil thick. If you are a smaller store, in this case that's defined as a store under 10,000 square feet, you will get an additional year to use up your supply. So it won't be until January 1st of 2021 that you will have to be using compliant bags. The larger stores, after January 1st of this coming year, will be required to charge 10 cents for any bag that you take out of the store that's a paper bag. If you bring your own bag, obviously you don't pay anything, and if you buy a reusable bag, that the price of that will fluctuate based on the store and whatever they choose. The smaller stores will never be required to charge the 10 cents. So that's one big difference. And we did this because we are trying to be as business friendly as we can while still achieving the goal of the ordinance, which is to encourage you to bring your own bags. And if you don't bring your own bag, then to pay part of the cost of the recycled bag. There will be an environmental compliance officer who will issue a warning for the first violation. The first citation will be $150, and subsequent violations will be $250. We will again be collecting comments from the public after the public hearing until April 3rd. Thank you. Any questions?
Of course. Thank you, Monica, for all of this. It's extremely thorough. Just a few questions, and it's probably in the detail, but maybe you could help us out.
Sure.
The first question is, if the state passes any legislation, we'll know by probably the end of June. So if that's the case, then what will the RTM do?
It's been my understanding that if the state passes some sort of legislation, and our legislation is let's just say more strict, then our legislation will stand. Okay. But as you know, the governor is talking about imposing a tax, and I am sure that we don't want a double tax on bags. That wouldn't make sense.
First question. My second question is, most of the stores in Darien, are they over 10,000 or under 10,000? I don't know.
I would say by number, we're probably helping 99% of the stores just by quantity. It's the larger stores. It's the CVS, Walgreens. It's the Palmer's, Stop and Shop.
Okay. So most of the other stores on the Post Road, let's just say, are under 10.
Right. And they're not. It's not even close, really. Okay. I think Merrill Lynch might be close, but I don't think they use a lot of bags.
Okay. And then my last question is the environmental compliance officer. Where is that? Who is that coming from, or where is that coming from?
Well, we were instructed to write this ordinance. I'm not on a hiring committee. I am hoping that we will have a volunteer come forward that will want to be responsible for this, and we will then have minimal costs associated with it. If we don't have a volunteer come forward, I don't know how we will staff this. I don't have that answer.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that more, and we have to talk about it in relation to a couple other ordinances. I think Kate's going to talk about blight in a little bit, so if you guys can hang out for Kate's report, that would be really helpful.
Sure.
Great. Thank you.
I guess one point of clarification based on Susan's first question about a state law, because that's my understanding, and I don't know where it is. I wasn't able to research today, but I will find out where that legislation is. That was going to be a 10 or 15 cent tax that I believe would go to the state. So what happens if we approve this and then a state law goes into effect that charges a fee that forms a different mechanism, that now requires the retailer to collect that money and send it to the state, and we have retailers collecting that money and keeping it for themselves based on our ordinance. What have you contemplated, what, if any, action the RTM would take in response to that? Even though we have no say over what the state does, but certainly it would create, as you said, a double burden for retailers. And I just wondered if you've contemplated that.
No, we haven't contemplated, but it would make sense to me that if the goal of the ordinance is to eliminate the use of single-use plastic bags, and we achieve that on a state level, then I could see us possibly disbanding this ordinance.
But
I don't know.
My understanding
That's a good
is
question. I don't have the answer to that. I'm
Thank
sorry.
if we're going to be eliminating the single-use plastic bags, that tax would only be on the single-use plastic bags. So we would have already, we wouldn't be sending money to the state if our
Right, because we wouldn't be using it.
marketplace here isn't using
Right.
them. Does that, so it doesn't
Right.
feel like a double tax to me? If we've eliminated the plastic, the single-stream plastic, then there's no tax.
Right, because
It
we're
would
not,
be- Actually, I
right.
feel like, in a way, it's more advantageous for us to pass this, so that we are set up, so that our community isn't taxed for every plastic bag, that we've already put in alternatives in place that won't burden the Darien community at all.
I guess,
I'll
yeah,
have to pull
I guess-
the legislation and see the wording of the legislation.
Yeah, I guess the only time that would have an impact is that additional year.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it depends on when the states kicks in, as opposed to when we have, you know, for that that extension. But otherwise, yes.
And with that said, too, is that the idea is that we're going to be educating the people of Darien and recreating the habit of bringing your own bag, right?
Yep.
So even over the course of that year, if our retailers still have plastic to give, they may not need to.
Right. They may, yeah, they may choose, yeah, they may, consumers may
They may
decide.
never get rid of those plastic bags.
Right, right.
Couldn't we have a conflict if the state just says, if you give out plastic bags, you have to charge the people 10 cents, but we're saying we're banning them, but the state is saying they're allowed, but you have to charge a tax? There could be a conflict between two.
As I understand it, and I'm not sure why this is, but I believe that if our ordinance is more restrictive, it can stand. It just can't be less restrictive than a state law, I believe. I think the state law sets the minimum standard, I believe.
That, I read the same thing, I think, but,
Yeah.
but that was, yours was a good point.
I really appreciate all of the analytics in your report on the public outreach that you've done so far. I don't know if you have that in report form. If that's something that you could provide back to us so that we could attach it as minutes to this meeting would be very helpful.
Sure. I'll
Okay.
write something up. You want,
Great.
you're kind of interested in the numbers, right?
Yeah, exactly the way you presented it was perfect.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anybody
Any
else?
other questions for Monica?
Or for Frank Kemp,
Okay.
who's here and is
Okay.
happy to answer any
Great,
questions.
thank
also.
you. I want to actually commend the two. I know others are working on this too, but I want to commend the two of you. I actually haven't seen a process for crafting law this detailed and thoughtful in a long time. So I'm really grateful for that. I think when you ultimately present it to the RTM, it will have been as thoughtfully considered as it could be.
Thank you. I will pass that on to Patrick also.
We would like to encourage participation on Wednesday evening, day after tomorrow, from anybody who's listening.
Great.
And they'll come out and state their views. As far as the problems of interfacing this with the state, with a possible state ordinance, we can always go back and amend out any conflicting things.
Okay.
If we put something in and the state overrides it, it would be a housekeeping matter for us to unwind it.
Okay.
Some of the proposals in Hartford seem to be more severe than ours. And the board knows whether they'll come in or not, but if they do pass a 15-cent charge on bags and total abandonment of plastic in 3 years or something like that, then we'll just have to roll with the bunches.
Okay, great, thank you. And again, for the public's knowledge, the public hearing is this Wednesday, March 27th at 8 p.m. in the Town Hall Auditorium.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to my report for the minutes. Bear with me this evening. I want to give you a legislative update at the end. So the 90-day public comment period has now begun for a draft of what's called the Long Island Sound Blue Plan, which was created in Public Act 15-66, through which Connecticut, this is some words that I learned today, Connecticut can develop a marine spatial bathymetry plan, which essentially is topography of the sea or sound bed that will help inform future projects, either related to natural resource preservation, other human uses like recreation, but allowing for future development. So it's really about collecting a data set that will inform how we can and should be using the Long Island Sound. Again, it's called the Long Island Sound Blue Plan. So 90 days to comment, and you can find the Blue Plan at www.ct.gov/DEEP/LIS Blue Plan. I haven't looked at it yet. There was the press release only came out this afternoon, but I thought it would be of great interest. I did send the information along to our Coastal Commission and Harbor Master. You probably have read in the paper that we had 2 pedestrian accidents, one on March 5th at Middlesex and Hollow Tree Ridge Road, and one on March 14th at the intersection of Center Street and Post Road. The pedestrians were both transported to local hospitals with minor injuries, thankfully no more than that. Both drivers were issued summons for failing to yield to pedestrians in crosswalks. It's to be noted that these pedestrians were in fact in crosswalks. But these accidents are representative of a much larger issue of distracted driving in Darien. And I've asked Chief Osborne to please add a discussion about these accidents to the Police Commission's agenda on April 3rd in their capacity as the local traffic authority. We really need to have some serious discussions around ways to help keep our pedestrians safe. Senator Bob Duff is holding an informational forum on shared service and shared opportunities this Friday, March 29th at 10 a.m. in room 2A of the Legislative Office Building. I'm hoping to be able to attend. I can report back. And a couple quick updates on notable pieces of legislation. Senate Bills 738, which is the Martin Looney bill on school consolidation. Senate Bill 457, which is the Duff bill on school consolidation. And House Bill 7319, which is the bill that would create separate taxing districts out of our schools, did not get voted out of the respective committees. I want to issue just a word of caution. Language of these bills can resurface in substitute language. They can resurface in other bills that have already been proposed, and they can resurface in the budget implementer bill if they have any implications to the state budget, either through expenditures or revenues, which in fact they do. House Bill 7150, the teacher pension sharing bill, is still very much alive. Although the education has not voted it out of committee yet, it's likely to be either voted on and moved to finance or voted through the Planning and Development Committee instead of the Education Committee. Senate Bill 431, which is the very large sort of omnibus tax reform bill with the 1% mill increase on your real property tax, elimination of the local motor vehicle tax and the imposition of a statewide motor vehicle tax, and a homestead exemption and an exemption for business personal property is still alive. So you'll be happy to know that Senate Bill 753, which would put a permanent ban on fracking waste, was voted out of the Environment Committee. That's where it stands at the moment. House Bill 7192, which includes a variety of different regionalization efforts, consolidation of dispatch centers, or PSAPs as they're called, public service answering points, the regionalization of certain tax assessment and collection services within the councils of governments, and a restructuring of the Advisory Committee on Intergovernment Affairs, and the creation of a Commission on Shared School Services is moving forward. There was some substitute language proposed by the governor last week to both 7192 and Governor's Bill 874 that took out the mandatory language of redistricting and consolidations and softened the language a bit to require recommendations to be made on plans for shared services and school consolidations through this new organization called the Commission on Shared School Services. House Bill 7350, which is one that hasn't really gotten much attention, would have our regional educational service centers, the RESCs, which work on a regional basis already with our school districts, would have to provide to their member towns an inventory of all the goods and services that the RESC can provide to local districts. And in addition, it would have to provide a plan for the provision of special educational services on a regional basis. That bill is anticipated to be voted on sometime between tomorrow and Monday in the Education Committee. And there are 3 toll bills that have been advanced by the Transportation Committee. House Bill 7202, which allows for tolls and the revenues to be directed to a new transportation priority projects account, not the special transportation account, which is very interesting to me. I need to learn more about that. Senate Bill 423, which enables the installation and operation of tolls along state highways, planning for 50 gantries, using congestion pricing and offering discounts to state residents, and charging differentiated fees based on the type of vehicle that you drive. And finally, House Bill 7280 requires CONDOT to develop a tolling plan and present it to the General Assembly. The General Assembly has 15 days to vote on such plan, or it is deemed approved, which is some shocking language for most of us. It's not good government process, but I shouldn't editorialize. It also, 7280 also creates a Transportation Finance Authority, and that finance authority would approve a statewide transportation plan and a capital plan, and assess the impacts of these plans on economic development, transit-oriented projects, and housing development. The authority would further be empowered to lease or acquire real property to implement infrastructure goals, and would create a Connecticut Infrastructure Bank to provide the financial resources to do such. So lots of very meaty things still weaving their way through the legislative process. I will endeavor to try and keep you updated as things happen.
Hey, just 2 quick things. First, now that the blight ordinance has been around for more than a year, and we've had some cases making their way and using the full breadth of the ordinance, I've asked the members of the board and some of the staff associated with the board to let us know what's working, what's not working, some of the problems they've encountered. gonna take that all in and then take a look at it and see if there are any recommendations to be made to the RTM for revisions to the blight ordinance, trying to make sure we get it working optimally. And I'm expecting that at your next meeting, we'll be bringing the police contract to you for approval.
The police?
The police contract.
Thank you. So because Frank is here, there might be some, a relationship between certain recommendations that we might bring forward to improve the blight ordinance that might be germane to what you're creating with the plastic bag ordinance. So we want to keep in close communication with you.
We'd be pleased to take them up, because again, we were in new territory with that
Yep.
ordinance, and naturally, we need to flesh it out if necessary. On the other hand, some of the issues are procedural. There's the ordinance,
Yep,
and then how it's actually being conducted, since it's the first time,
yep.
might not rise to the level of changing. But thank you, Kate, for helping sort that out. I wouldn't want to be too quick to change the ordinance if it's something that because they have an issue to say that we haven't developed a procedure for issuing that citation, much less a lien. There's a lot of moving parts that actually need to get moving.
Yes, we'll include you in meetings as we go forward to have those important discussions.
I'm perfectly willing to change the ordinance if we have to.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to, we are going to receive 2 project updates today. First, Mark will provide an update on the Pear Tree Beach Building Committee.
My colleague is ahead of me in that he has handed out his notes, but if he would pass those along for me.
I didn't have a folder to put them in.
Well, that slowed me down, doesn't it? And I have one for the recording secretary.
Thank you very much.
All right. On October 24th, our building committee met for the first time. We elected Randy Tankless and Michael Scrow as co-chairman. Randy is an experienced boater and has recent experience in coastal regulations and construction. Michael is a member of the Parks and Recreation Commission. It's very convenient. Other members of our committee are Martha Banks, Tom Bell, Cheryl Russell, Diana McGuire, and myself, Mark Thorne. First Selectman Jamie Stevenson, the Director of Parks and Recreation Pam Geary, and Laureen Bora, Chairman of Park and Recreation Commission, are ex officio members, and Adele Conniff as our alternate. We began our work with a tour of the Pear Tree Beach geography and facilities. We also toured the new Norotan Yacht Club building, as it is an example of current techniques for flood-resistant construction in a coastal environment. We also reviewed our building committee charge from the Board of Selectmen and the objectives created for us by the Parks and Recreation Commission. Also at this time, the Park and Recreation Commission and our committee received many comments from the public regarding the objectives. Residents expressed some strong feelings, as well as some excellent suggestions. We worked with Park and Recreation staff to write a request for proposal for an updated survey of the property in time to start the main part of the project. We received 8 bid proposals. We selected the low bidder, and the survey work is nearly complete. So that's something actually done. We worked with Park and Recreation staff to write a request for proposal for the architectural and coastal design work to meet the objectives of the project. Our RFP states that evaluating rehabilitation of the existing building will be done early in our design process. We posted and mailed RFPs to prospective bidders at the end of November for response by early January. They need a few weeks to put that together. We received 5 bid proposals. Each was a team response that combined architecture with landscape design and coastal engineering. 2 bid proposals failed to meet the fixed price specification in the RFP and were removed from consideration. Late in January, with the assistance again of Parks and Recreation staff, we interviewed the 3 qualified bid teams to evaluate their ability to meet our objectives and the terms of our RFP. All 3 teams were judged to be very close in competence and responsiveness to the RFP. We selected the low-cost bid team and proceeded to finalize a contract between them and the town. In February, we realized the bid team we selected would not meet our requirement for a fixed price for the work. We decided to contact the next lowest cost bid team to see if they were willing to be reconsidered. They were, and we interviewed again the team of Neil Houck Architecture, aligned with Weston and Sampson Landscape Design. We then rejected our earlier selection and selected Houck/Weston and Sampson to do the work. Neil Houck Architecture designed the recent Weed Beach improvements and supervised their construction. Weston and Sampson worked with our Parks and Recreation Commission on the Park and Recreation Master Plan that was completed in the January of 2018. We expect we will soon reach a contract agreement. And finally, the project completion date will not be known until we get a little later in the planning process. Questions?
Great, it's a thorough summary. Appreciate. Questions for Mark?
Why did the erstwhile winning bidder suddenly change their tune to be not a fixed price contract?
There were, in their response, there were some that where they responded to the cost of the contract, it wasn't real crisp. So in retrospect, it may have been better judgment to have taken care of that earlier. But we thought we had an agreement, and I suspect there was some changing on their side as well. I wasn't part of the negotiation with them, but it became clear we weren't going to get there, so we had to let that go.
Yeah, I think they looked at some aspects of the project and they basically admitted they weren't going to be able to do the work for what the price that they had originally stated that they could do it for. And so they had to withdraw their price.
Obviously, I'm trying to avoid that kind of problem going forward, so that's why I asked.
I think it more had to do with the location and the flood requirements and what could we do with the existing building versus building new. So I don't think we would see the same type of issue with the school.
There was some personnel also. Their project manager was not available to meet with us when we interviewed them.
Okay.
And when he saw the result later, I suspect he was anxious to renegotiate.
I got it. Okay.
Mark, are you still getting some input from the public? Do people come to the meetings and give input, or right now, because you're in this phase?
Well, certainly not so much, but yes, a little. Some come, and thanks to the wonders of Channel 79, I'm sure there are quite a few dozen keeping close track to what we're doing.
Any other questions for Mark? Really appreciate the update, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Kip is going to give us an update on the Ox Ridge Elementary School Building Committee work.
Well, you've got my report. It's in button format. So we started our committee on February 4th. We were fully launched with a special meeting. Myself and Duke Deneen were elected as co-chairs, and Michael Alfieri was elected as secretary. Our committee consists of 7 full members and an alternate. We're supported by a number of ex officio members, including Jamie, Kate, Tara Oxman, Board of Ed Chair, Dr. Landon, Acting Superintendent, Michael Feeney, Director of Finance, and Michael Lynch, Director of Facilities for the Board of Education. So over the past 49 days, what did we do? We reviewed our charge of responsibilities as initiated by the Board of Education and adopted by the Board of Selectmen on October 15th of 2018. That's when it was adopted. The education specifications for early learning program were explained by Dr. Landon. They're somewhat unique. The town permitting process was outlined by Jeremy Ginsburg. The requirements and key milestones for submitting an application for a state grant for a school construction project, especially in light of the potential changes proposed by the governor, were reviewed. The necessary steps to develop a full design and construction package were also reviewed. Additionally, what we've done is we developed and issued an RFP for architectural and engineering design services with an April 4th deadline for submission. We contracted for a site survey update and solicited proposals for an updated traffic study and hazardous material survey and remediation report. We developed a draft of a total project timeline, broke it down into significant segments, which are the milestones. We discussed the application of expandability and flexibility in school design as it was practiced when building the Middlesex Middle School. We toured both Ox Ridge School and Tokenie School to understand both the deficiencies, the requirements, as well as the positive elements, at least of the new design at Tokenie. Our current activities will focus on reviewing the architectural RFPs, choosing finalists and start interviews. That'll happen starting next week. Determining the desired role of a construction manager, followed by developing and publishing an RFQ. We'll do that this Friday. Conduct additional school tours focusing on key attributes and/or representative works of the architects that we choose as finalists. Evaluate site construction restraints on the construction during the construction process. We're a very tight spot. We're trying to build a school on a 10-acre site and have a school continue there at the same time. And so it's a question of really how tight is the spot? Do we have enough room to do it? We're going to continue to evaluate and explore the possibility of state grant. That's one of the more complex parts of our process. And we're going to begin the program development phase, which really is starting to talk to the school people as well as the reviewing the ed specs. I will say that one of the big mysteries here has been state grant. Briefly speaking, in the past, we were under the lower limit of receiving a grant, which was 20% of approved school expenditures. What that usually meant, according to Kate, and looking at this, was if a project costs X dollars, usually something like 14% qualified for school expenditures. And so we got 14% reimbursement at best. Well, the governor's proposal changes that whole dimension, so it's the bottom limit is now 5%, and with the debt diet that he wants to do, it could be there won't even be funding for that. What's the significance of that? The significance is maybe a 1-year delay in doing the project. The state deadline for filing is June 30th. If you miss it, you have to wait for a full year. If we wait for a full year, we'll have time, we'll have money spent, we'll have a school that has not been changed. So the question is, how much money would we actually get under a state grant under the new rules, and they're going to be evolving until the legislature has finished passing all the bills they have. And what does it mean for us, and do we want to really go through that process? It's a very expensive process to do from a bureaucratic point of view.
And were we not told that in order to be approved by the state, we actually have to have the local funding in place?
Which is another big problem.
Which is a big problem.
Because we would have to go to the RTM and give them a schematic diagram, a rough estimate of costs, which is what we never wanted to do, and then say, give us the leeway with all of these contingencies in there, and we'll now go to the state saying, we got approval, but it may not be anywhere near what we're going to spend. And that's just not a good tact.
It's not a good model.
That's the process that we're trying to change.
And the state
Right.
forces you into that model.
Yeah.
And frankly, we had I had a meeting with Mike Feeney over at the Board of Education. I said, Mike, picture the cost of complying with all of the state's requirements to submit the application, and then monitoring it all the way through to then eventually get your grant money, which could be 4 to 5 years after you finish the project in terms of total repayment, just as Greenwich High School just found out. They got their last payment this year. I said, what is the bureaucratic cost of all that? It could be $250,000 over the 3 or 4 years, easily, in terms of time and effort spent. So you have to put all that together to figure out, is it really worth kowtowing to the state to get a minimal amount of money? We have to make that calculus at some point.
Yeah.
We just don't know yet. That's a big concern, because it's a full year's delay at least.
Did you have a question, Mark?
No, I was going like this, 5%.
So,
5%, yeah. Down
so
from
is
20.
there a way to have some kind of financial analysis done to include those items, the administration of the process over the next couple of years, making some assumptions about changes in the funding levels, and asking the Board of Finance to have that conversation?
Well, we don't think that we could meet a June 30th filing deadline no matter what.
Correct, I would
So,
agree.
by June 30th, we should know what's been passed in Hartford.
Okay.
So we'll have part of the equation better known. We can then, if it's a 5% is the maximum we're gonna get, and we can figure out that qualified school costs are never the full dollar amount of our project.
Right.
So we could then sort of make an estimate of what that might be. We also have to make an estimate of what the project might cost,
Right.
which we're trying to avoid going there until we have much more
Correct.
factual information. At that point, we can also, because people have come and said, well, we'll be happy to help you do all that administrative work for a price. So we could ask them, well, what would it cost you to do all this work for us? Which would be a measure of what it might cost internally.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then you can just put your delay factor, how long it takes to get your money back. Then you can do the whole present value analysis and see
Yeah.
whether it's really worth it.
Okay.
Plus a year's delay.
Plus a year's delay,
Yep.
because, you know,
Yep.
in case you missed the point, if we want the state money, and we're not gonna make the June 2019 deadline, that's just not gonna happen.
June
If we
30th,
want state money, we can't do anything until June 30, 2020.
Including getting bids.
Right.
Oh,
So
really?
that means,
Oh.
you know, you're not
You
putting
cannot
a
get
shovel in the
bids.
ground until after that.
So
Yeah.
think about that. You can't get bids,
You cannot
but you
get
have
bids.
you have to approve the funding.
You have to approve the funding without having a good,
Yeah.
you know, we'd have to be going off estimates and swags.
With
and-
all kinds of contingencies built in.
Yeah,
I mean, literally, it says you cannot go out and get bids. You can't do it until the state has both approved and granted you, and approved your grant, which is just, you know, you think about it, it is a great way to make towns be not accountable for spending.
Correct.
Well, and then Kip, after, let's just say we waited till 2020 and went through the approval process, there's no guarantee
You get it.
that you're even gonna get it.
No, that's correct.
So we could possibly have foregone a year.
A year
well,
and a
I would
half.
say once we got the approval, whatever grant program is in place at that time, once we got the approval, we're going to get that grant.
But you don't get the approval
But you don't-
until December.
And we also have a whole nother year of legislation that we have no idea
What's
what could or
True.
couldn't happen.
Yeah, between now and
Could
then.
be-
Second
be
year of the
better,
biennium, there'll
could
be
be
budget
worse.
adjustments, yeah.
Mhm.
My-
Let's just say that we have a bias right now for taking action, but we don't want to suddenly say, well, let's just give up
No.
$3-4 million. That would be crazy. We can't do that. So we have to understand what it is. But
To make an educated decision.
Right,
right.
right.
But maybe the good news, bad news, is that we couldn't get to the June 30th deadline this year in any event. So at least we'll have everything that we're doing now, if we decide and we look at the situation at that time, that look, it's a long run for a short slide, doesn't make any sense. We could just plow right ahead and start the bidding process, and we could have this all done by August of 2021. That would be good. Anyway, that's sort of where we're at, that's sort of our conundrum, and that's the kind of stuff we're dealing with.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that and look forward to those difficult conversations that we're gonna have to have.
That's okay, we'll get to it.
Any other questions for Kip? Okay, then we will move on to old business. We have to discuss and take action on the summer sidewalk sales. There was an outstanding question, I believe, on the sidewalk sales. Kate, are you able to
Yes.
opine on that?
The question related to businesses, the letter from planning and zoning to the chamber saying that businesses that do not participate in the chamber's program cannot have sidewalk sales. The reference to the chamber's program is actually the sidewalk sales. You do not need to be a member of the chamber to participate in the sidewalk sales. Everybody who does participate pays a fee. Members of the chamber pay a lower fee, but non-members can be in the sidewalk sales if they pay the sidewalk sale fee. So it is open to all businesses as long as they are willing to pay a fee.
Thank you for that clarification. Does that answer your outstanding question, Mark?
That helps, but it doesn't help if it's a community organization. Let me pick one. One we know well this time of year, Girl Scout cookies.
Okay, yep.
All right? They are to be excluded by the police from participating in the sidewalk sales?
If they don't pay their fee to the chamber, they can participate. There's just a requirement for being part of the program.
Any indication how much the fees are?
Last year, the fee for non-members was $450 and members was $195.
So much for the Girl Scouts.
We didn't discuss whether they make any provision for organizations such as that. The discussion was centered around businesses.
I see.
Mm-hmm. And they very well might make accommodation for nonprofit organizations, but we didn't have that to ask that question.
I'd like to hear. I'd like to wait. I'll help you make phone calls if you want.
Okay, all right. I will ask that question.
And it's not just the Girl Scouts. There may be some other.
Oh, there's plenty of other organizations that participate, but all pay a fee. For example, I can tell you that the Republican Town Committee
Yes.
had a space last year.
Yes, they did.
We paid a fee to participate.
Well, I won't get the committee's correct name right, but you guys launched your,
Yep.
the food recycling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we can ask probably we can drill down a little bit more to see if there's any fee exemptions for certain organizations, if there's a tiered fee schedule for.
So maybe this would be helpful to say, maybe we need to be a little bit more specific. So nonprofits, such as the Girl Scouts, or government.
There was an accommodation made for us for the composting.
Well, okay.
I think at the time, and I'm just sort of jogging my memory, they said that there was a table available for the Board of Selectmen or something, and that could be honored, and we took it.
Okay.
But so, I guess I'm trying to make sure so Kate knows. Is there anything else, Mark, that we can think of to expand the list so that way it's complete this last time? Would it be nonprofits?
Nonprofits, government, or town-sponsored organizations, like, for example, the Sustainability Committee, right?
Yes.
Or Monuments and Ceremonies,
right.
Bicentennial Committee, right?
And these may be committees who are not selling merchandise.
Just giving out
Absolutely.
information.
Educational.
Yeah.
Maybe you get Save the Sound or groups like that might want to come. So we can find that out.
Now, it's their party, but we have to decide whether we want to issue the permit.
Sure. Well, I would argue that the Darien sidewalk sales, remember the primary mission is to support local business.
Yeah.
It's great that we have all these other organizations that may or may not want to participate, but the objective is to highlight and support our local business.
Okay.
So based on that, I think we have the information that we need. Any business can participate so long as they pay a fee to participate in the program. but we can find out the information on the other organizations.
I'm almost ready to vote.
Great. Okay, it'll come back on April 8th.
Thank you.
All right, new business, discuss and take action to approve the Community Fund's 40th running of the Darien Road Race, which is Sunday, September 15th, subject to the requirements of Parks and Rec and the Darien Police Department.
Yeah, I just noticed a typo on the resolution that says September 15th, 2018, should be 19.
Yep, you're right. Any questions about the Community Fund event? Fabulous, 40
So moved.
years, crazy. Okay, yep. May I have a second?
Second.
Mark? All those in favor? Okay, we're going to move on to a series of transfers. I'll turn it over to you, Kate.
Okay, let's see. First up, we have a survey for the Oxford Elementary School. The property had not been surveyed in over a decade, so prior to commencing the project, we needed to get a survey, including designation of wetlands. So this transfer, it's based on a proposal from Redness and Mead, and it includes the cost of the soil scientist and a small amount of reimbursable expenses.
So, since we don't have any project funding for this, does this cost get added into the project cost later?
And so Jen and I talked about it, and she wanted to handle any of these early costs through the reserve, the capital fund, and then when we get to later in the, we'll transfer them over to the project fund and
Okay.
include them in the financing.
And then reimburse these, will
Yes.
there be some reimbursement to this
Yeah.
reserve contingency
Yes.
fund?
This was also the recommendation of our committee member, John Zagrodsky, chairman of the Finance Committee.
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions about the funding for the survey? All right, so Susan moves a transfer from reserve contingency to a survey account in the amount of $10,000. So Susan moves, may I have a second? Pam, all those in favor? Great. Okay, next one.
The next one is, okay, the finance department. If you recall, our payroll administrator had retired last fall, and while we were determining how we wanted to handle that position going forward, we hired a temp from an agency. Some of the cost was offset by savings in the salary account, but we are going to need, we need to move money back. We need to move money from the salary account to cover the professional services, and we're going to need a small amount from contingency to cover the full cost.
Questions?
And we do now have a permanent payroll administrator in place.
No questions.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to move $20,719 from a combination of funding from the full-time salary and contingency accounts to professional services.
So moved.
Kip, may I have a second? Susan? All those in favor? Thank you. Okay. Board of Finance.
This one is cleaning up the end of the Good Wives sediment dredging. We had state grants for it, but the money, let's see, how do we put this? The state would not allow us to move money between we had this 2 steep grants allocated for 2 different purposes, and the state would not allow us to move between the 2. So even though our costs went over on one and we're under on the other, they wouldn't let us reallocate it.
Okay.
So
Of course not.
this
All
is,
right, well,
this
that's
is the result that needs
accountability,
to come
okay.
from town funding to cover the full cost of the project.
Okay, so we are looking at a $142,526 transfer from Board of Finance Reserve to the Good Wives sedimentation dredging project. Does the one, I'm a little confused, does the 142,526 represent a total town contribution, or is it offset by that second steep grant?
So
That's the total town contribution.
All right. So this is a contribution that we did not
We
anticipate
did not
needing to make.
anticipate needing to make, no.
Wow, it's a pretty significant
Yeah.
project
Okay.
overage. I mean, it's a great project. It needed to be done, but I hope that as we move forward with other sedimentation basin projects, we can avoid cost overruns of this size.
It's the dam repair is the big problem, right? I must say, it's a hard to read chart, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
The dam repair is the greater part of the cost, yes.
It looks like that's where the greatest overage occurred, correct? With a small amount,
Right.
with the total clean testing, right? If I'm reading this correctly.
The clean testing
Oh, no, that was in a separate grant.
But what they wouldn't allow us to do was to move, if you see like down the sediment removal,
You saved 180,000 there, you couldn't.
and they
move it
wouldn't
over.
let us repurpose
Understand.
So
it.
where is that money?
Going back
That
to the
money
state.
Going
stayed
back
with
to
the
the
state.
state?
No,
Yeah.
we never got it from the state.
Oh. So we thought we were getting 280 on this, that one thing of the 285, and we only needed 105.
Yes.
So we only got one.
So we only got 105.
Yeah. What a
Grant
shame.
doesn't mean you get, grant means you'll
Yeah.
get reimbursed.
Yep.
On the
Okay.
first line, there's $25,000 reimbursement. Is that the gift from the Friends of
Yes.
Worms Pond?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're very grateful for their gift. All right, well, not happy about this one, but I'll entertain a motion to approve since the project is complete. Pam? May I have a second? Kip? All those in favor? Reluctantly, I will approve this.
All right,
Is that unanimous?
yes.
Yes, everybody, yes?
Yes.
Okay,
With gnashing of teeth.
yes.
There's a grumble.
Completely agree, thank you. And I really think it's unfortunate. Obviously, the state intended to support this project. But,
They were not easy to deal with.
yeah,
On this subject, does someone like in Public Works or somewhere in the town of Darien understand this cost overrun on dam repair? Because I think, looked like the estimate was 135.
We did not expect the state to refuse to allow us to reallocate the
I understand that.
proceeds. Had we anticipated that, we might have gone about things differently.
In other words, been a little more precise in the estimating,
Yeah. Or
which I think is your.
not done certain things.
I guess, yeah.
remember that the town too was working very much in collaboration with the Friends of Gorham's Pond,
Sure.
who were deeply involved in costing out this project. And, you know, I think everybody really did the best they could, but
Well, I
we need to find a better way. This can't really
I
happen again.
suspect there was an incident or something, you know, an excavator got stuck in the pond or, you know,
No,
something
I don't think
to
that,
run up
but-
those costs, you know?
We'll find, if there was anything extraordinary that resulted in the 267,822, we'll find that out.
I personally am not interested in the excuse. I'm interested in, you know, learning.
Yep,
That's
sure. Okay, thank you. And our final transfer is finance and IT.
Right, so this is funding to allow us to implement Tyler Content Manager with Munis system. It's a digital system that will store images such as our payroll invoices, our W-2s, purchase orders, invoices. We expect that, well, it'll save money in terms of the payroll advices, so we no longer have to print out everybody's direct deposit advice. It'll be a scan, it'll be emailed to people. We'll also be able to scan every invoice and store them digitally. which will be tremendous time savings for staff going forward, that it'll just have a barcode on and you can look up the actual image of the invoice. It'll be helpful for things like the audit, filing grants, et cetera. It's also going to allow us to implement an employee self-service program where, say, it's getting close to tax time, can't find your W-2, you'd be able to go in through the employee self-service system and get your W-2 because the image will be stored there. So this would fund our implementation of that.
I think it's a great idea.
I think so too.
Find efficiencies in digitization.
Well, and it'll, take a burden off the finance
Yes.
staff to have to answer some of these things.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it'll help make them more efficient.
Payroll is a little bit repetitive, so, yeah.
Any other questions about this?
Yeah.
This is a $7,620 transfer from contingency to software maintenance and support.
So moved.
Mark moves. May I have a second? Kip? All those in favor? Great. Okay, on to minutes. We have regular meeting minutes of the March 11th meeting. I just had one. Page 2, Mrs. Marks needs an S on the end of her last name.
Yep.
May I comment that this is not very visible?
Yes. We didn't have an electronic version of Jamie's report, so we had to scan it in.
It's readable, but
Just a complaint.
any other corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve as amended. So we have, I saw Pam's hand go up, so it'll be Pam with a second by Susan. All those in favor? Great, thank you. And we have our special meeting minutes of March 11th. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Kip, may I have a second? Susan, all those in favor? Thank you. Okay. Very exciting. We have 3 fabulous new volunteers this evening. I'll read them all and we'll take one vote. We would like to appoint Leslie McCauley to the Architectural Review Board for a term expiring June 30th, 2021. We'd like to appoint Loren Gomez to Monuments and Ceremonies Commission for a term expiring on November 30th, 2022. And to appoint Tier Hessert to the Parks and Recreation Commission for a term expiring on March 31st, 2022. All phenomenal volunteers, so grateful they came forward. So I'll entertain a motion to approve. Pam? Seconded by, did I see your hand go up, Mark?
Sure.
Okay, Mark? All those in favor?
I wasn't there, so. I mean,
Are you going to abstain?
if I wasn't there, except I was there for Gomez.
Okay, so,
I'm happy to say yes.
so why don't,
Doesn't matter.
I'll entertain a motion to approve Leslie McCauley and Tier Hessert. We have, so I'll entertain that motion, go back and do the motions again. So all those in favor, 4 and 1 abstention, okay? And then I'll entertain a motion to appoint Loren Gomez to Monuments and Ceremonies. Kip moves, second, please. Mark, all those in favor? Great.
Sorry about
Okay.
that.
Is that clear enough? Yep. Okay, thank you. All right, agenda review. We have a parking meeting that we owe the committee.
Jamie, it's not really our agenda review, but when was the last time that the Consolidated Services Committee met? Do you have any recollection?
I don't have the date.
So I know it's really the Board of Finance that has to initiate that, if I'm not mistaken. So again, it's not our agenda, but can we ask the Board of Finance to initiate a meeting of Consolidated Services between the Board of Education, the town, and Board of Finance?
Actually, I think that I can convene that meeting. I just want to make sure that we have something to talk about.
So with everything that is going on in the state, have we ever looked thoroughly at non-educational services? I know that the committee has done some work. They looked a lot into insurance, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
But has there ever been an analysis of all non-educational services to see if it's worth pursuing or not? I've heard through the years that, well, it's the unions, that we can't merge the unions, so that's kind of been a stumbling block. But maybe it's time to look at it again or look beyond it. I don't know. That would be my reason to get it going again.
So what I'd like to recommend, and I appreciate your thought around that, what I'd like to recommend is to get beyond this legislative session, because there's some legislation being proposed that might remove the barriers to service sharing that includes different bargaining units.
Okay.
So if that goes forward, then what I think I'd like to recommend is that we hire a consultant to undertake a comprehensive study on the shared services. But of course, we would need to have the buy-in of the Board of Education to be able to do that.
Okay.
But you're correct. I don't think, we talked about a number of things and haven't really been able to move off the dime on anything in particular. What I would say that is equally as important is to have an inventory, if you will, of the services that we do share, both within our town and regionally or statewide, because I think there is a misperception that we don't share services, but in fact, we certainly do it extensively in the area of emergency response and preparedness. We're part of purchasing cooperatives that are statewide and regional based. So perhaps some of this work has been done in the past. I'm not sure, Kate, if it would predate me, to be honest, if we've ever really done a comprehensive inventory of service sharing.
I don't think we've ever done an inventory now.
Okay, so that would be valuable because we're often the subject of discussion with people in Hartford, and it would be really nice to be able to say, what we do and what we don't do and where we could improve if the town had the will to do that. Anything else for agenda review? No?
No, I really want to wait until we see more legislation go through before. I mean, as we have with the bag ordinance right now, I just, I would like to see what's going to come down, because some of the things I'm very interested in will affect us in that way.
Good. All right, well then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Pam, may I have a second? Susan, all those in favor?